The head of the European Commission issued an impassioned plea Wednesday for Europe to face up to its immigration crisis.
What is happening to human beings? We are talking about European beings. We are not talking about numbers. Human beings coming from Syria and Libya today could easily be the case in Ukraine tomorrow.
More than 500,000 migrants have entered Europe thus far this year, most of them on foot, with what is left of their lives on their backs. The German government may get close to 1 million by the end of the year. It's a human crisis, taxing social services, housing, emergency services, nations in debt, dictators killing their own people, terror groups executing non-believers, and like in past wars, America will not be untouched in the crisis. The world's undergoing a serious change. Our guest is a research professor of migration and transnationalism studies, specializing in international migration. Welcome Jorgen Carling to the Hardline. Jorgen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Put this in perspective, will you, for us? Because some are saying we have not seen anything like this since World War II.
No, that's correct. It is the largest refugee crisis since then. And I think it's a decisive moment that we don't yet really know how it will play out over the coming years. Is this a crisis that we will look back on as a temporary event, or is it something that's here to stay as, in a way, the new normal of migration in Europe?
The new normal of migration, are we looking, and in your opinion, what kind of change are we looking at, not only for Europe, but then eventually to America as the migrants continue to look for homes?
I don't think that this will really affect America directly, because I think most of the people who are now entering Europe primarily want to stay in Europe. We know there are some, like the father of Aylan Kurdi, the boy who was photographed on the beach. Mm-hmm. They had plans to go to Canada, and I think that made a lot of people think that that's a common wish among the refugees to go to North America. But I think the vast majority have their eyes set on Europe.
Does this show us how ill-prepared Europe and the European Union were for something of this magnitude?
Yes, I think we can say that it does, because I think, in a way, the essence of European policy over the past decade or a couple of decades has been sort of hypocritical, where we, on the one hand, embrace the principle that we give protection to people who flee persecution. We embrace that part of human rights. And at the same time, we make it as difficult and dangerous as possible to reach Europe and seek protection. And that's how the numbers have been kept down. But what's happened now is that a much larger number of people have felt that they need to take the risk and need to pay the expense of going. And that's resulted, on the one hand, in a much higher death toll than we've seen before, and in a much higher number of arrivals.
I only have about 30 seconds left. When you talk about human rights and human compassion, does it show that there's been a real lack of that in Europe as dictators kill people, terrorists move around the world and displace these people? It really hasn't been shown.
Well, I think at the moment we do see a lot of compassion in Europe, and there's been quite a decisive turn in the sentiment in Europe just over the past few weeks, with, at the moment, the welcoming reaction completely overshadowing the anti-immigrant reaction that was much more vocal earlier in the year.
It is frightening to consider the people that are suffering at this moment as we speak, and the human toll that's being taken right now, in the way that these people need help from every government right now in order to save their lives. We will follow up with you. Jorgen Carling, I want to thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, because frankly, it's something that the world needs to hear, and needs to hear often.